things are getting strange in X-Files Rewatch podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Kim.
Do we have news?
No, I don't think I've got any this week.
Hey, we're still in Illinois. We've left Chicago. We've gone over to this prison in Illinois for Orison.
Yay.
More enthusiasm, come on.
Yay.
That's better. The Orison, directed by Rob Bowman. I'm going to make some jokes about him later.
Anyone would think you've got a grudge.
I'm just not letting go of Trevor. I mean, just really, man, what is wrong with you? Written by Chip Johansson. Broadcast on the 9th of January 2000. Guest stars Scott Wilson as the Reverend Orison. You have seen him in Exorcist 3.
You're assuming I can remember Exorcist 3. That's the good one, isn't it?
It's one with Brad Dourif.
Yeah, with the Gemini killer.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, it's a good film.
He was also in Judge Dredd.
Original?
The Stallone one.
Yeah. Weird.
Oh my, yes. But then we have So then we have Lisa Arch, who played the Lady in Red, who I think is a sex worker that Donnie Pfaster kind of orders part
yeah,
with.
makes sense.
That's the only person I can think of this could possibly be. She was in Seinfeld and Legally Blonde.
Oh, okay.
And that's it for interesting casting, because Donnie Pfaster we've covered elsewhere, because it's the same guy.
Yep. So, do you have a synopsis for Orison?
Oh my, yes. At a prison in Marion, Illinois, an inmate loses his fingers in a workshop accident. Time seems to slow down as another inmate, Donnie Pfaster, walks out of the room and leaves the prison. Hearing about the escape, Mulder and Scully investigate. They learn that 3 men escaped from 3 prisons, all of whom had contact with a prison chaplain named Reverend Orison. Eventually, the US Marshals corner Pfaster and Orison at a diner, but Orison uses his power of persuasion to distract the Marshals, allowing the two to escape. Pfaster takes Orison's car and runs him over. Meanwhile, Scully keeps hearing the Dennis Edwards song Don't Look Any Further everywhere she goes, and soon believes it is a sign. The agents find and question Orison, who is himself an ex-convict, and claim that he's doing the work of God. After a medical exam, Mulder finds that Orison has 3 times the blood flow capacity of the brain due to a hole he has drilled into his own head, allowing him to perform mental tricks by hypnotizing people. Orison hypnotizes a security guard in his room and easily escapes. Meanwhile, at Orison's apartment, a sex worker escapes when Pfaster attacks her for wearing a wig. Orison then finds Pfaster and takes him at gunpoint into the woods, where Orison digs a grave for Pfaster, who then morphs into a demonic beast and kills him, burying him in his own shallow grave. Pfaster then calls the police and tells them where Orison is buried, and goes to Scully's house. He attacks Scully, who tells him that the only reason he was not given the death penalty was because she asked the judge for life. He overpowers her and locks her in her own closet. Mulder thinks something may be wrong when he hears the same song on his radio, and calls Scully. After receiving no answer, he goes to her house and stumbles upon Pfaster, promptly arresting him. Meanwhile, Scully escapes the closet and shoots Pfaster despite him being unarmed, and kills him. Scully later confides in Mulder, telling him that she's scared that she's not sure who is in control of her, God or something else.
There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost is, so Scully is totally fired. Really, I don't think you get to keep your career when you do this.
It should be noted that this is one of the biggest and most damning critiques of this episode, is that it ends with Scully killing an unarmed man in cold blood.
An unarmed man in cold blood, who is also being at gunpoint by her partner, who is in the process of arresting him. I think this is the whole, and I know police, there's a whole thing about police getting off on ridiculous charges, but I'm not sure Scully can escape this one, because I think the prosecution are going to have a field day with it.
Absolutely.
So yes, he had broken into your apartment, he had confined you, but your partner arrived and arrested him, and you still shot him. Multiple times.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, I'm sure God Made Me Do It is a really good defense.
Yeah. I mean, reading over the synopsis, there's just so much in this episode, and I have a weird personal anecdote.
Oh, go on then.
So I first watched this episode in student accommodation. Not a lot. Just second year of university, so we just moved out, got a new house together. Everyone's living together, and I think collectively we started to drift apart quite soon after that. But we all sat and watched at least this episode of the X-Files, and I know this because we were going shopping, and my friend was driving me and his partner in the car, and there was some discussion about human consciousness that somehow come up, and he sort of said, "Oh yeah, the only thing impeding brain intelligence is the amount of oxygen flow to the brain." And I said, "That was the X-Files. That was like 3 nights ago on the X-Files."
It should be noted that trepanning is actually a medical practice that is still done today to relieve pressure on the brain. And I'm pretty sure that everyone who's trepanned doesn't gain amazing mesmerist powers.
Yes, but also, from any kind of biological standpoint, oxygen just doesn't pass out of the air into your blood vessels or anything. That's what your lungs are there for.
Mm.
You don't just you don't have open wounds and inhale through them or something.
I believe, and I'm thinking back to my GCSEs where we did medicine and history, that the idea of trepanation used to be it would create like a direct path. So, like spiritual energy could flow directly into you through that hole in your head. So it was more a kind of shamanistic thing in the sense the X-Files is talking to, rather than its medical application of it relieves pressure on the brain. I know somebody whose husband had a car accident and massive head trauma and had to be trepanned just to, save his life.
Yeah. It is a done thing, but this episode is just like gibberish.
Mm.
I mean, we also have to circle back to the elephant in the room, which is Donnie Pfaster himself. There's quite a lot of things about Donnie Pfaster. I mean, first and foremost is, we've made a point many, many years ago now, or a few years ago, that most X-Files episodes leave themselves open to a sequel.
Yeah.
Irresistible is one of those, although, except for Tombs, none of them have actually proven themselves worthwhile.
True.
This is one of them. And Donnie Pfaster especially did not need a follow-up.
Apparently, this episode wasn't originally written to include Donnie Pfaster.
It shows. It shows badly.
The episode was actually written by one of Millennium's producers, and apparently, though I haven't actually watched Millennium, a lot of critiques comment that it has more of a feel of a Millennium episode, this one. But it was actually originally about a convict with the power to stop time.
Which I can completely see, because that seems to be the point.
However, then Spotnitz and Carter got hold of it, and apparently they always had an idea that they wanted to bring back some earlier monsters in this season, and for some reason they hit on the fact that, hey, this will be the perfect vessel for Donnie Pfaster.
Yeah, you can bring back the Fluke Man, you can bring back Jose Chung, you could bring back...
I'll take Cecil Lively.
Cecil Lively would have been fine.
Mm.
No Donnie Pfaster.
Again, I wouldn't discount it, because Donnie Pfaster has a kind of more intrinsic link to Scully than most of the other monsters, and you could have done something interesting with that.
Yeah, I think the problem is they fail to.
I think our problem is the first half of this episode is something unique, which just has him shoehorned into it, and the second half is a retread of Irresistible.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the biggest problem is the second half of the episode doesn't deviate appreciably whatsoever. Because it's like even Donnie Pfaster apparently has spent, 3-4 years in prison and got out and just 5 years. And
the tagline said something about how he kidnapped Scully 5 years ago.
But the fact that he goes back to exactly the same modus operandi immediately, there is no wiggle room, no change to anything. He's not being even more careful.
Well, there's one kind of major change in the fact that we've decided now that Donnie Pfaster actually is a demon.
Well, I was going to leave that, but yeah.
As the manifestation of pure evil, you can buy why he's kind of gone straight back into his old modus operandi.
Yeah, but then you have to ask, so how did you arrest him? How did he remain in prison for 5 years if he's literally a demon?
Being good as gold, apparently, while in prison.
And, not doing anything, having to deal with some crappy guards, but otherwise just getting on with his life. I think the other problem with it also is you've got that bifurcation. So the first half is Orison, and then the second half is Irresistible Redux.
Yeah.
You kind of needed, on top of, if you have to do it like this, and I don't think you should, but the Irresistible Redux should have an indication, like, from the start that he's obsessed with Scully still. Like, the fact she got away has been gnawing at him, because that's not in the episode either.
You also needed more indication from Scully's side when it's specifically Donnie Pfaster that's gotten out, this man who almost killed her. You don't really see any conflict within Scully whatsoever right until the very end, when she, as we previously mentioned, just murders him in cold blood.
Yeah, we don't get a sense that this has been an ongoing problem for her.
Mm.
And
in fact, I think that was something that Paula Vitaris at Cinefantastique pulled this up on, of you don't get any idea that Scully is struggling within the episode.
No, or has been struggling with this. I mean, I think it never made it into our previous episodes, though we kept noting it, is the amount of desecrated corpses Scully has now seen and just blasé about them. Just absolutely no problem whatsoever. Except for Irresistible, which, just completely threw her out of sync.
True. I mean, and we've seen some pretty nasty deaths. I mean, just look at those hollowed out Jelnana corpses that aliens have crawled out of.
Yeah.
But somehow Donnie Pfaster's victims are more disturbing.
Yeah. And the problem with it as well is it's, that whole idea of Donnie Pfaster returning and sort of coming after Scully once more is a bad idea, but I can see the appeal of it because, again, if you'd been leading up to this, you could have done something with it. But they haven't. Donnie Pfaster hasn't even been mentioned since Irresistible.
No. And I will like to bet he's never mentioned ever again.
Yes, and neither will Scully's inexplicable escape from being arrested.
No, we did note that on a syndicated drama, it's like, say this was something with an actual running plot, say Dexter or something like that. Yeah. This would be a reoccurrent thing for the rest of the season of Scully trying to get her badge and gun back or something like that.
Yeah, you'd get the trial of people trying to prepare defences.
The heavy therapy.
Yeah, there would be a lot of stuff going on. Whereas we know that the next time we see Scully, she will be investigating some stage magicians.
In a rather flippant episode as well.
I mean, it's one of these weird ones where sometimes it feels fair and sometimes it feels unfair. Because, I mean, X-Files is hewing back to an earlier kind of TV. I mean, much like Star Trek. And I was thinking more of the original series on Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, which started to have ongoing plots, because that started to become a big thing in the 90s. And the X-Files problem is it gestures at it with the conspiracy stuff, and then it just leaves the Monster of the Week stuff just to lie there, but then sometimes has the sequel episodes. And given the fact you're trying to do it both ways means that when you don't actually make things flow into it, it just jars worse.
Especially as they kind of considered the LA era to be a kind of soft reset of the series. It's weird to hark back to this villain that people who have just come in season 6 will not know who it is.
I will give them they don't do a bad job of basically giving you his whole thing again.
He's an easy villain to understand, to be fair. He kills women and desecrates their corpses.
Yeah, but then we've got cannibalism, which isn't a thing I think we had before.
I think it's just a throwaway line that Mulder says about him eating pinky fingers, but we never saw that previously. He just kind of kept them in his fridge, I think.
Yeah, and it's one of these things where if you're keeping these things and you're storing them, then you have to freeze them, otherwise they're gonna decompose.
But I didn't think he was a cannibal in the previous episodes. I thought he was just a kind of fetishist. These were his little trophies.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's all I got from him. But yeah, and then he just does his thing, and it's not clear how he found Scully's apartment.
He is a demon power.
I know, he's a demon now. Sure, why not? Yeah.
I did some reading into that because we debated last time, and I think I even put it to Twitter if people thought he actually was a demon, and most people assumed he wasn't. Actually, Chris Carter did say that, I found out. In the original episode, he said he got the idea because it was interviews with people who'd been held in these kind of stressful situations, had sometimes had reports that they saw their kind of captor take on demonic attributes or something like that. He'd physically change. So he took this idea and actually showed, from Scully's perspective, he's turning into a demon, which is a bit more baffling because someone else at the start of the episode also sees him as a demon.
We're trying to think about it a bit.
But in this one, you're supposed to take it as we've completely just retconned this. He is a demon. He is the embodiment of pure evil, or whatever Spotnitz called him in that interview I was trying to cite earlier.
Yeah. The Chip Johansson did not get that memo.
No.
And Chris Carter, showrunner, didn't say, now wait a minute. We should probably talk about Reverend Orison, who is...
the titular character.
The titular character, who stops being relevant halfway through. Who is really weird, or at least... I can only sort of imagine that this is one of those... have you ever read the Thursday Next books?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so this is kind of the whole... the idea that you can enter into a book and you can disrupt it if you model with a narrative.
Oh, like the Unwritten, the comic series.
Yeah, the Unwritten work. Yeah, it's that kind of concept. And basically, if you enter into a book, you're meant to try and avoid the attention of the reader so you don't change anything.
Okay.
And one of the points in Thursday Next is she changes the end of Jane Eyre. Because Jane Eyre ends differently to how we know it. Because she's the whispered voice that the guy hears near the end of the book.
Oh, okay.
So basically, yeah, she has fundamentally altered the book to the version we know it.
I see.
So that kind of thing. But Orison is kind of like, you have an episode about the Reverend Orison, And unfortunately, it's Donnie Pfaster. And then Donnie Pfaster runs over the Reverend Orison and takes over the episode. It's like Donnie Pfaster has hijacked someone else's episode.
Yeah.
It's how it feels. Which, I mean, it was quite funny for Donnie Pfaster to say, no, I'm not doing that. I'm run you over, kill this poor teen who doesn't get a name. And we kind of forget that he just murdered this woman in cold blood again.
I think Orison himself isn't that problematic.
No.
He's an interesting character and you could make an interesting episode just about this idea of a priest who thinks he knows better than the courts and believes he can rehabilitate these prisoners that he's using his kind of psychic power to abscond from prison.
Yeah, but we're rehabilitating inverted commas given he's taking them out to the woods and shooting them.
He's taking them out, giving them a very brief chance and killing them if they don't do it.
Exactly. So, and again, that in itself is a fine idea for an episode.
It also kind of harks nicely. The best bit in the episode is that opening with the other prisoner thinking he's got his fingers chopped off.
Yeah.
Because you're already getting into the idea of the mesmerism because he's continuing the kind of call and response, the rhythmic prayer that Orison does in the opening sequence, the Glory Amen, which Mulder proves earlier that he'll just kind of do on command if you make a certain hand gesture.
Yeah.
You could feed into this nice idea about how this guy does have some incredible hypnotic power.
Yeah, although I've realised what might have happened there is someone's going to say, isn't this Pusher?
It's a little like Pusher, but it's more specific because it's not something he's doing immediately, is it? It's something he's ingrained in this guy.
Oh, true. It's different, but I don't know if it's different enough for someone who's looking at it and going, wait a minute, we kind of did this.
That opening sequence is shocking and it's really effective. It's nicely shot with the slow motion as well. When you see Donnie Pfaster using this kind of chaos as a moment where he can walk out. We've no idea how he manages to get beyond that one room. Yeah,
and we also have to say, are you lot really in a workshop at 6 a.m?
A workshop that I've got to assume just opens straight out onto the street, given that no one else stopped. There are no other checks that stop Donnie Pfaster on the way out.
It's also, as much as I can buy that he can hypnotise this entire room, because the prison guards were in the room when he was doing the sermon. There are other people. Well, as you said, it must open onto the street because otherwise there are other people between you and the road, surely.
I've never actually been to a prison, but I have been to a mental hospital before and they have essentially airlock doors. So, you can get past one set of doors which have to close behind you before someone opens the next set. And I'm going to guess prisons have a similar thing.
Well, I would say think of both the Blues Brothers and Shawshank Redemption for your view of how prison gates would work.
So it is similar.
It's very similar. It's basically, you won't be able to get into a place, they'll shut the doors behind you and open the doors in front of you again.
Yeah, when I visited someone in a mental hospital once, it was a similar idea. You had to go through about 3 sets of doors, but the ones in front of you wouldn't open until the ones behind you closed.
Yeah.
Which means someone has to be manning them, who is also therefore being kind of coerced by this mesmer to open and close the doors.
Yep. And he's doing all of this without actually being in the room and playing, kind of just the guy saying it when he's doing his whatever he's doing, leathercraft or whatever. Shall we talk about this song, which I have never heard outside the context of this episode, and feels like one of the worst shoehorned plot things I've ever seen, and I don't understand what they were trying.
Don't look any closer.
Yeah, I mean, I get that the only thing I can think of is someone saw the track name and thought, I can write this in... Or Chip Johansson saw that and thought, I can write this into my script because that's a great directive, don't look any closer. And then had to try and justify it, and the justification is terrible. So this was the song that Scully heard when she found out her Sunday school teacher had been murdered.
Yep.
When she was a teenager.
Yep.
What?
And she's never heard it since, apparently. This has just sparked that bad memory when she first hears it in this episode.
Yeah, well, I can imagine not wanting to listen to it because of the association, but that you have never run across it ever in the intervening years, given that it's part of your generation's music. People would put it on the oldie stations, you get the best of whatever year this was.
You get that in a weird coincidence. In the last 2 days, I've heard I Want to Break Free playing in 2 different places over tannoys. And from that, apparently I'm supposed to take some deeper meaning from this, that it's trying to tell me something.
Yeah, unfortunately you have to try and remember the first time you heard.
The first time I want to hear... But, that sort of thing sometimes happens. You just hear a random song you haven't heard in a long time, then you hear it again in close succession.
I mean, to be fair to Scully, it's not clear if in the prison she's actually hearing it, because it's coming through an air duct of all things.
Mulder hears it too.
Does he hear it as well? Okay. But it's a weird running thing for the episode they don't actually do anything with either. I mean, it's presumably the voice of God is playing this track.
I was thinking this before, and there is a more obvious track we could have used here that would have deeper meaning.
Go on.
Beyond the Sea.
Yeah.
The other song that Scully heard in weird places that had a meaning to her.
Well, Chip Johansson hasn't actually watched season 1.
Yeah. But that was the entire point of that episode, where she keeps hearing Beyond the Sea in different places.
It's true. That would have made more sense, and I think that would be a better memory issue than my Sunday school teacher, which is one of those that's a bit removed unless you...
Again, you could, with Beyond the Sea, you could hark back to my father and, the feeling that your dad's trying to warn you about something.
Yeah. Rather than my Sunday school teacher who... Scully, I mean, maybe Sunday school is different for you, but I don't think I can name my Sunday school teachers.
I never had one. I think Scully grew up in a more religious background than you did as well, though. So
True.
Maybe that their Sunday school, their kind of religious community played a bigger part in their life than it did for yours.
True. Well, I mean, I also say that she probably remembers it better because her one died. Murdered in his front yard at random at 6 a.m. or something. It was timing-wise as well.
6:06, I guess.
6:06, yeah. And her clock occasionally shows 6:66, and you found out that's probably wrong.
Yeah, it was just a weird thing I happened to be reading this morning, in fact, that they reckon that 666 isn't actually the number of the beast now. It's because older copies of the Bible that they were translating this from were damaged, and they did the best they could at the time to translate these. But with modern imaging and the ability to scan these texts thoroughly, they believe it now is actually 616, the number of the beast.
So you can just display that on a digital clock without problem.
It makes the little kind of mark of the beast in the omen a little less dramatic if it's got the one in the middle.
Yes.
Not nice and symmetrical like it is now.
No. A shame. And you can't do all those jokes about Australian police and things.
True. Oh, I just got the joke.
You got them, that's fine.
Yep.
Do we have anything else for Orison? Because in general, it's the episode is kind of fascinating in a catastrophe way, but not an entertaining catastrophe way, because it's actually kind of boring.
It's oddly polarizing if you read reviews, actually. Some people really like it.
I don't understand why.
I'm beginning to deeply disagree with reviews written by Tom Kesenik, to be honest, because he just seems to be overwhelmingly positive about the episodes I think are really bad.
Okay, so we'll hold this hot because I do want to know what he thought of Fight Club.
Yeah, that will be curious when we
Given
get to Fight Club.
Generally,
he really likes Orison.
Yeah, but generally, I don't think anyone has defended Fight Club, so I'll be very curious.
Most people found it difficult to say much positive about it because essentially anything you like about this episode, if there is anything, is completely eclipsed by that ending in which Scully just is completely out of character.
And murders a man.
Yeah.
But it's like, even the people that Scully has inadvertently killed with bad first aid, or let slide into paper recyclers, or shot in the course of duty, shooting Donnie Pfaster is a different level of thing that she's never done before. And Mulder hasn't managed to murder a person in cold blood yet. He's been accused of it a few times, but he's never done it yet.
Yeah. It's so out of character, it doesn't even feel like Scully in any way.
And then we just say it didn't happen. It's gonna just...
And it was all a dream.
Oh, if only. So I did say at the top that basically I had a thing for Rob Bowman. It's a case of I am wondering if, in interviews he said that the lady in red or the teenage runaway or the waitress in the diner was in fact the true villain of the episode.
I wouldn't dismiss it at this stage, to be honest.
Like the lady in red, because she didn't wear a wig, meant that Donnie Pfaster had to, murder her, or she escaped, didn't she?
She escaped.
She escaped. Because he couldn't murder her, he had to go for Scully. So it's actually all her fault that Donnie Pfaster goes for Scully at the end, and that's why she shoots him. So in the end, it's actually this sex worker's fault who doesn't have a name.
You're never going to forgive Rob Bowman, are you?
I'm really not, because I don't understand why he felt the need to say this. It's just so weird. Right, anyway, we're going to go to LA. We're going to go to the pier. There's an amusement park down there. I'm not sure where this is in LA, but it's in LA.
It was Santa Monica.
Santa Monica. We're going to go to Santa Monica. There's a lovely pier. There's a magic act. It is The Amazing Maleeni.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! Directed by Thomas J. Wright. Written by John Gilnett, being Frank Spotnitz, Vince Gilligan, and
John Shaban.
John Shaban. Shaban! First broadcast on the 16th of January 2000. Guest stars. We have Ricky Jay as Herman and Albert Pinchbeck, who was in Boogie Nights. Tomorrow Never Dies.
Ah.
He's also in Mystery Men, which I'd completely forgotten about, and The Prestige.
That seems appropriate.
Yep, and shows up as himself in The Simpsons.
It should be noted he's a real magician.
And
as
yes,
well.
he is a real magician, as is Jonathan Levitt, who played Billy LeBon, who is also a magician, and has been in a few things, but nothing really of note. But now let's have some weird ones. So we have Robert Lasado, who played Sissy Alvarez.
Okay.
Who was in Short Circuit 2, Waterworld, Wishmaster 2, The Human Centipede 3,
Oh, God.
and multiple series of CSI.
Well, that explains why I recognise him.
Yep. But that's not the good one. Because instead we have Stephen Barr, who played the Courier Guard.
Okay, yeah.
Right, so you're not thinking much of this. Atlantis Lost Empire. He was Cookie.
Oh, right, yeah.
He's in Dark Skies. It keeps happening. Mark in the middle. But this is the one that made me sort of remark. So, he's in Mass Effect.
Okay.
He's Rex.
Oh, Rex is the best.
In every instance of Mass Effect, he's Rex.
Oh,
that guy.
Wonderful. I love Rex.
He's also in World of Final Fantasy, but you'd never guess where.
Go on.
The Tonbury.
He's a monster.
It must die, obviously. But would you like to, Penn and Teller style, how was the trick done? By which I mean, what's the synopsis of this episode? But
well, steel yourself for this amazing, fantastical, debonair debacle, the likes of which have never been seen before on screen.
I realise I've never actually seen Penn and Teller do a thing, so I don't know if this is what they do.
You get the idea of it, though. Penn's the kind of loud, flamboyant one.
No, hang
Teller
on.
doesn't speak.
Yeah, I was going to say, loud and flamboyant. No, one of them talks, the other one doesn't. This is Jay and Silent Bob.
That's the gist. Yeah, much like Jay and Silent Bob.
Except reversed from the normal way.
Mm-hmm. Yep, the little guy's the quiet one, the big guy's the loud one.
Yep.
Anyhow, again, as usual, kind of ad-libbed from Wikipedia. Our episode this time opens on the Santa Monica Pier, where we see a magician who goes by the stage name of the Amazing Maleeni, doing a kind of lackluster cup and ball trick while he's heckled by another magician who we later learn is called Billy LeBons. At the finale of his act, the Maleeni does a seemingly impossible trick where he twists his head all the way round. Later, he is approached in his car, but is discovered dead, his head falling off and kind of rolling across the floor on discovery. Mulder and Scully arrive on the case, with Mulder fixated on the fact that this is an X-File due to the impossible nature of the trick, and his death which occurred with no witnesses in a very short amount of time. They question Billy LeBons, who tells the agents that he believed that Maleeni was an absolute hack, comparing him to Salieri, whereas LeBons, of course, is Mozart. Scully performs an autopsy on Maleeni and proves that even though his head was indeed cleanly cut off, he actually died of a heart attack sometime before. She believed it was perhaps a month previously and that he'd been kept refrigerated, even though the carnival manager ascertained the fact that he had been spoken to moments before his head fell off. In the meantime, LeBons approaches a man named Sissy Alvarez. This is a former bank robber to whom Maleeni owes money following a high-stakes poker game. LeBons claims to be the one who caused Maleeni's head to fall off, and says that he can give Alvarez the money he's owed, but only if he helps him out with some magic. Meanwhile, Mulder and Scully learn that Maleeni has an identical twin brother called Albert Pinchbeck. When they meet with him at the bank where he works, they see that Albert is wearing a neck brace, which he says he got in a car accident in Mexico. Mulder expresses a belief that he is the one who did the magic act on the pier. However, Albert reveals that he also lost both legs in the accident and is currently in a wheelchair, therefore could not have been that Maleeni. After Mulder and Scully have left, Pinchbeck is threatened by Alvarez at his job, saying that he will kill him if he doesn't get his money. We also see Albert rather suspiciously handling a security officer's gun, claiming that he's thinking of getting one for personal protection. Afterwards, the security truck transporting the money, guarded by this particular security guard who's had his gun fondled, is turned over apparently by Alvarez. The officer fires several rounds at him, however, Alvarez makes his escape. We as the viewer see that it's not actually Alvarez, it's Le Bon, who has disguised himself by drawing Alvarez's very distinct tattoos on his hands. Mulder becomes obsessed with the fact that Pinchbeck is actually Maleeni and confronts him again in the office, proving that he is fate having no legs. Although they do not know exactly how he was involved in the incident involving the security truck, Pinchbeck is still arrested, as is Le Bon, who strangely calls in the police at an attack in a pub, which is caused actually by himself brandishing a gun, leading to his arrest. While Pinchbeck and Le Bon are both in prison, the vault at Pinchbeck's work is emptied and the money is discovered in Alvarez's bar, which comes as a surprise to no one given his history as a bank robber. Later, Mulder and Scully confront Le Bon and Maleeni as they are released on bail. Mulder explains that he's figured out their plan. Le Bon and Pinchbeck are not enemies as they have attested, but they're actually working together. Their end goal was to put Alvarez in prison for making Le Bon's life miserable in prison 8 years prior. He believes that, as the two are accomplished magicians, they could easily escape, perform the robbery, and return to their cells with no one noticing. The two magicians are released because there is no evidence against them. Mulder reveals to Scully that this was just all a great cover for their true trick. Alvarez was the misdirection, and they were actually after access to electronic fund transfers, or EFTs. It was revealed earlier in the episode by the bank manager that he would need Mulder's badge number and thumbprint to gain access to the EFT system. Mulder reveals that he has lifted Maleeni's wallet from evidence before he confronted him and Le Bon. When they first met, Le Bon had discreetly pickpocketed both of their badges to show off his skills at sleight of hands. Meanwhile, on their first meeting with Pinchbeck, he did a card trick with Mulder which left Mulder's fingerprints on a card, which has still been secured safely in Maleeni's wallet. Mulder explains how the pair purposely acted in a very high-profile way to draw out the FBI so they could collect the badge number and thumbprint they needed, which would have allowed them to be able to perform EFTs and leave with a lot of monies. As they leave the jail, Scully and Mulder discuss how Maleeni actually did the head-spinning trick. Scully reveals that she can turn her hand around in 360 degrees in a similar fashion. When Mulder asks Scully to explain how she did it, she brushes it off and simply says it's magic.
Thank you. It's a good, fun episode, at least.
Yeah, it's entertaining. A lot of the critiques of this episode said its problem is it's not exciting in any way, which is very true. It's a very slow episode.
It is, and also it feels like it's missing a last sting.
Yeah.
Because it's a bit too easy for Mulder to say, oh, well, I fooled their plan and gets away with it, and then the two magicians just never see it again.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of wanted to see them ride off into the sunset having, one final dupe that Mulder thinks he's outthought them and they're like 3 steps ahead already still.
Yeah.
But no.
You're kind of wanting it all to work out, because the framing, especially at the end, is very Usual Suspects.
Yeah.
You want some way in which they realise that the last as they've let them go, that they've really outfoxed them.
Yes. We don't get that.
No, there's no Kaiser Soze here.
There is not. There is a lot of fun moments, a lot of weird bits as well.
Mm.
I think you found there's a critical plot hole.
You're so desperate to know about my plot hole, aren't you?
I am very curious as to exactly what the fundamental flaw is.
Okay. And steel yourself for this amazing revelation will just turn your perception of the episode upside down.
Oh, tell me more.
Well, it's the whole idea of their plan in the end relied on getting hold of an FBI agent's badge number and fingerprint. So, we've ascertained the fact that they had to do something to lure in the FBI.
Yep.
Mulder and Scully only arrive on the scene because Mulder believes it's an X-file.
That's a good point.
There's no other reason why the FBI would have been called in on this case. So how would they know that they would lure someone in with what they did?
That is a very good point.
Which means that everything they've done is entirely pointless because they haven't done something that would normally attract the attention of the FBI.
Yeah, and it does mean that their impossible crime, except to... If it had been specifically to get hold of Mulder, then yeah, it would all worked out given the weirdness of the crime to pull them in. Otherwise, it would just be...
If you'd done something to really attract the attention of the usual FBI, who usually are involved in high-stakes things like crimes that cross borders, terrorist acts, stuff like that, a magician's head falling off at a pier would not do it.
I was going to say, you've touched on one of the obvious other instances you could think of, which is Die Hard, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Which Hans Gruber purposely escalated a situation to the point that the FBI arrive in order to facilitate what he needs them to do.
Yeah. But you see how high stakes that situation had to be to do it as well.
They sort of deliberately made everything much more complicated than it should have been just to get them in. And that was all part of the escape plan. So that all worked very nicely. Whereas, sawing my brother's head off while he's been in a freezer for a month is not quite the same.
No. It specifically would only attract Mulder.
Yeah. And we do also have and I know it's the whole machines don't do their tricks, but no one in real life, because that's some blatant CGI when he does it, can do the head 360 thing.
I believe that's the only impossible trick in the episode, though.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Everything else you can do with stunt work or sleight of hand. Because indeed, Ricky Jay is the main magician in the episode. He would only work with them if they allowed him to do tricks he was already familiar with.
Okay.
Because I don't believe he expressly said it, but Spotnitz read into it the fact that magicians often aren't portrayed very well on screen, and he wanted to make sure it would all be realistic, so therefore every trick he does is a genuine magic sleight of hand trick.
Okay. I'm just thinking that it sort of didn't set any kind of precedent, because a few years later you have Arrested Development, and Job does not make the magic community look very good.
You know, interestingly, if they couldn't have got Ricky Jay, the second in line to play that part was going to be David Blaine.
That'd be fairly hysterical given David Blaine's career trajectory. I went from being really quite respected to public nuisance.
Utterly insane.
Yeah, mocked mercilessly by Jonathan Creek every other episode.
Yeah. When you see him in interviews, he always seems a bit unhinged as well, so it would be interesting to see his take on Albert Pinchbeck.
Yeah, whether they actually be willing to do any of it.
But it is neat knowing those tricks are kind of genuine, because there were one or two that when we were watching it, you questioned if it was camera trickery, and apparently it isn't.
Apparently not. But some of it is quick cut, so you can't be sure.
Mm.
One thing, though, and it's not really a plot hole, it's kind of a whole, would they actually be able to do this, is the actual bank robbery. Where they're both in jail. They managed, I can completely buy they can pickpocket the keys and get themselves back out again. That's fine. No one noticing them, getting a bit into the area of unbelievability. Emptying a vault in a bank and sticking it into the ceiling tiles above a snooker club in 12 hours, if you're being really generous, feels a little bit suspect.
And no one noticing them gone in this time frame.
No one noticed them going, no one noticed them counting stuff into the snooker club, because that's not a small quantity of thing, is it?
If you could buy this, you've used the simile of Jonathan Creek now, there'd be some clever trick that would fool the cameras or something while they were gone. They would have done something.
Yeah.
Because in a Jonathan Creek episode, even if it's a well-placed mirror, there is always something that kind of fools the eye to allow these things to be done.
But also in Jonathan Creek, none of the mysteries involve anything of that, moving at that kind of scale. It's usually someone getting out and murdering someone and getting back without being noticed, or someone being in the wrong place when they should be somewhere else. It's not robbing a bank and then getting back into...
I was actually thinking of Jonathan Creek when we were watching the episode. It was specifically the episode that's called Time Waits for Norman.
Yes, there's some reminiscence there.
Which involves a man apparently dying in America but then showing up unharmed in the UK.
Yeah.
And it's all, I won't spoil the episode, but it's all kind of turns on your head your expectations of how this man can apparently time travel.
Yes.
And there's a very simple explanation for how it all works in the end.
It's kind of time travel, but it's also kind of how can he be in two places at the same time?
Mm.
And again, as you said, there's some very specific camera work they've done to make sure how this is going to work. How the reveal makes sense.
But the reveal is also incredibly simple how he does it, and when he does it, it all makes perfect sense throughout. There's not really a hole there.
Yes. And it's different to this, though, because in Jonathan Creek, there was always a cover story for where he was.
Mm.
It's not, we broke out of jail and gone and robbed things. Because I'm trying to think, I'm sure there's another film I've seen one time where basically their alibi was purely they were in prison at the time, and they break out of jail to go and do something.
Yeah.
So it's not a concept that's not been done. I think it's just the amount of stuff, and the fact they don't have accomplices is what gives me pause.
Yeah. You also mentioned the fact that the statue has been in The Prestige, which is interesting because it's another story that requires, at least in parts of it, for there to be a twin.
Yes.
And again, I don't want to spoil it too much, but part of one of the many, many twists in The Prestige involves an identical twin.
Yes. Oh, yeah, and I think I was thinking about going through it is the fact that if we take what Herman says as gospel, he's never made use of the fact he does have an identical twin, because, like, the Prestige goes into quite a lot of stuff about you can do things, if you've got a twin, you can do things. You have to make an astonishing sacrifice to get away with it, though.
It has to be the fact that the audience aren't aware you have a twin.
Yes, and if you want to do this one trick, you dedicate your entire life to making sure that detail is never known by anyone.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it can't work. And yeah, I would venture that John Gilness has not read The Prestige at this time, because it was out.
The book would have been,
The book was out, because I remember reading it a little while after it came out, and that was 96 or something was when I read.
Should be noted it's an excellent book as well.
It is a very good book, and quite different to the film, because the whole framing device the book has the film did not use at all.
But it's a kind of interesting take on magicians, because it is the idea that to become a successful magician, you have to make enormous sacrifices.
Yeah, and it's odd that the episode kind of touches on it with Herman and Albert, but not really. Because they do it very opportunistic. Because again, we don't know how much of Herman's backstory is actually true, whether he really did give up on magic and then wanted his brother to go out on a high kind of thing.
Yeah.
And still, even if why'd you retire from magic if you can do a twist your head around 360 degrees thing on demand? I don't understand.
It'd be such a trick because no one will figure out how you did it.
No, and apparently it's a case of, yeah, you could just do that. Can we put you in a CAD scan while you do this? Do we just want to know how the nerves are working on this? Do you have to rotate back the other way like an owl?
I'd love to see it deconstructed. Like, as we mentioned, Penn and Teller, that was their big gimmick, is that they would perform the illusion and then explain how it was done.
Yeah.
I'd love to see Maleeni deconstruct his trick, to be honest.
Yeah, because the only ways I know of to do something even close to that in real life, you'd need both brothers for one thing. But you'd also have to you'd have to have something obscuring parts of the body or make it not clear you're looking at both people at the same time.
So, like some mirror work.
Yeah, all that, you put the person in the box and you push the cube out the middle of it.
Oh, yeah. That's
those
normally
kind of
done
ones.
with, like, contortion and things
It
like
is.
that.
There's multiple people in there, and there's contortionists who's crammed up into one of the top boxes. But that's the kind of way I know you to do it in stage magic, but that's basically how this episode presents it. Is impossible given he's out in the open. There's nothing obscuring him.
And even the best contortionists cannot turn themselves all 360 like that.
Yeah.
It's impossible because your head would fall off, as demonstrated here.
Well, possibly not fall off, but I think you've broken your neck in a few places and you've probably wrecked your larynx and everything else.
I think even animals like owls can't turn their heads all the way around.
No, and I think also it goes so far and then you have to twist it back again,
Yeah.
don't you? But we all say it's a fun episode, and it's interesting the pretensions it's got with the whole referencing Salieri and Mozart. Jeez. Yeah, you think very highly of yourself there.
I thought it had a good amount of comedy in the episode too. I love the bit where they get Le Bon's to turn over the vehicle to prove how the trick was done, and he just flamboyantly pulls back the kind of cloth on the floor and then gets frustrated because he can't prove it.
Yeah, although then it turns out that's entirely been an act the entire time.
Yeah, well, that's the fun with magic.
It is kind of fun. And I would say some of his pickpocketing feels a little on the implausible side.
That he manages to do so while being 6 feet away from the person at all times.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you go for the filmic pickpockets. I mean, like, Ocean's 11 mostly makes sense, except for when he's in the bar with George Clooney and he just does it while they don't go near each other. But then, contrast, you just saw the Better Call Saul scene with the reverse pickpocketing.
Where Huel puts the thing in Chuck's pocket.
Yeah, and basically it's the whole, you have to collide with them to do this.
That even if it's brief, there has to be some contact.
Yeah, there's no way to do it without it.
So
I did think him digging in the wallets was a bit iffy, and also when he stole Alvarez's notebook, which I think was actively impossible given he didn't move from the spot.
Yeah.
It's just, it's holding it. What?
He's a very, very good pickpocket.
Well, yes, I mean, quite why he's bothering with this kind of stunt thing when he can just...
I think that's the problem is, I can take the tone. People saying the episode wasn't exciting, that's fine. Episodes don't have to always be exciting. It's fun, it's got neat characters. I'd have liked to see how they did every step along the way in the style of Ocean's 11.
Yeah.
So, you say they broke out of prison and got back in with no one noticing. I want to see how.
I'm guessing its episode length and budget was probably constraining them.
Yeah.
I said the other thing then that made me realise is it's kind of laid out like an old-fashioned magic trick. It's like quite slow and ponderous. And there was scope there to do Maleeni stuff like that and then have Le Bon very flashy, very modern magic. And it's just things they didn't do. That
the like old school magic circle versus the new flamboyant style of magic.
Like, again, do it like David Blaine does, like very ad hoc, spur of the moment thing.
And trendy.
Yeah. Versus, because, Maleeni is doing some very, very old stuff.
Also got the framing of the episode like an old magic trick, like you say. That's also something the Prestige does.
Yeah.
Well, in the Prestige anyway, they say that a trick has 3 parts. You've got the trick is where they kind of explain what they're going to be doing.
Yeah.
The turn is where something unexpected happens. And the Prestige is the dramatic bit at the end where the result is revealed to the applause of the audience.
Exactly.
So in the same way, that's how the movie of the Prestige is kind of structured. Is you have a vague idea of what's going on, it flips it on the head in the middle, and then you have the dramatic ending.
Yes.
So that's also how you really should have structured this episode, to follow the stages of a magic trick.
Incidentally, Christopher Priest kind of said after we watched the film of The Prestige, he's like, I should have started the book like that.
Yeah.
Given that bit where they explained it at the start. So why didn't I do that? But it's a good episode. I mean, I think we also have to give props for, like, an iconic image, which is Scully in a top hat, which is...
You see that picture everywhere.
We see that picture everywhere, but you can understand why, because it's really good. It's like, 5 seconds of screen time, and it's sort of indelibly blazed on your memory.
And suits her.
It does suit her. I mean, when we watched it on DVDs the first time, this was one of the menu images that showed up for season 7. And it's a great image. It's just, Scully, do you want to wear the top hat more often? You've got to look.
She's got a bit of brevity after she totes murdered that guy.
Well, yeah. We're not talking about that.
It should be noted that Gillian Anderson, and indeed all the cast and crew, reported they really liked filming this episode, because you got to see a load of magic tricks. It was great. Yeah. It was like being at an amusement park, I think they said. But Gillian Anderson commented that it gave them some issues with the tone of the episode, because it was fun, it was all this exciting things going around, and they still had to keep that gravitas of, there has been a murder.
Yeah. Well, except there hasn't been a murder. He died of natural causes. They think it's a murder. And then we have all the Sissy Alvarez stuff, which is... I do kind of get revenge for 8 years ago, but at the same time, it's been 8 years. Do you not want to let it go?
He was the turn as well.
He
was the kind of misdirection. Because our big trick was supposed to be pilfering the EFTs.
True. It still just felt a little bit like revenge still, given they so thoroughly sort of managed to frame him for the bank robbery.
I imagine there was some revenge in there too. But at the same time, you were supposed to buy that this was just a revenge story because it would actually hide their heist.
It's true. I did also kind of can't help but laugh at the bit where he does replace the magazine with the blanks. Just how bizarre that line of dialogue is. It's like, oh, after Mexico, I've been thinking about getting a gun to protect myself. You were in a car accident. Your legs weren't cut off by the Mexican cartel.
But maybe he's thinking he's vulnerable now that he's in a wheelchair.
Well, possibly. It's just that was what I read to me of, you were in a car accident.
I love the fact he managed to change those bullets for blank while the security guard is looking at him as well. That's some sleight of hand.
It is. I mean, I would imagine that it was less, he had a prepared magazine rather than he actually sort of switched them out individually.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, that would have been quite a trick. And that was Rex from Mass Effect.
I really like Rex.
I know you do. That's why I brought it up. Couldn't not tell you that Rex is in the X-Files. Who knew? Do we have much else for this episode? Because I think both episodes are there again. I think season 7 has got a lot of just fine episodes. They're not great. They're not terrible. Well, some of them are terrible, but most of them sort of deviate to the middle.
I wouldn't say that this is a bad episode anyway.
No.
I actually really like it. It's one of those episodes like the Rain King and Goldberg variation that I just watched it with a smile on my face.
At the same time, it's not exactly memorable.
No, I don't think it's as good as either of those episodes, to be honest. It's fine. I don't hate it. I quite like it, actually, but it would never make my top list of the X-Files episodes.
No. And I think it's just... It does feel kind of like there's something missing from it again, or it should... If you made this a two-parter, maybe you could have had all the elaborate Ocean's 11 stuff going on at the same time.
Turn it into a proper heist story.
Yeah, and I think that possibly is like one of the things that hindering it is it's a heist, then it almost works, but it's also a heist in like the most boring manner of a heist.
Yeah.
Given you kind of want them to actually see them, carry the bags of money out, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And says, "Oh no, we're going to electronically transfer it." It's like, while this is a very modern way of doing it, that's really boring from a film perspective.
Yay, cybercrime!
Yay, these numbers have gone up, and I don't understand why the banks like say, okay, so freeze those accounts, transfer everything back over again, die. Because that's like Die Hard and like Ocean's 11. In Die Hard, they have the barrel bonds, which are functionally identical to cash.
Yeah, so it's physical.
It's physical. And in Ocean's 11, they walk out with the contents of the vault.
Mm.
Yay, they have the money, and you can't do much about it once they've absconded and you don't know who they are. Until the sequels, of course. And this one is, I don't know, electronic. I understand the whole idea of making this elaborate double, triple bluff with all these moving parts and how the trick works is fine. It's just not a great bank robbery. Even if, or rather, we got a bank robbery, which we didn't get to see, which was just a cover for the real bank robbery, which we also don't get to see.
Mm.
Do we have anything else for this episode?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, so next time we have, because I always think these are the same title, but I know the second one isn't, but it's Signs and Wonders.
Yep.
And Sign and Sight, which I keep thinking, is that the follow-up to Signs and Wonders? But no, because Signs and Wonders is about snakes, and we'll get to Sign and Sight.
Sign and Sight is another conspiracy episode. It's the first part of a two-parter.
It is, for the first time for the first time in a while, we're splitting it up across weeks because we can't control this one.
No.
In the meantime, if you'd like to get hold of us, our email address is thingsargettingstrange42@gmail.com.
You can also find us on social media, and please do let me know if you'd like us to promote anything at the start of this show, be it any conventions, fan events, competitions, neat fan projects you've got on the go. The sky's the limit. We're on Twitter and Tumblr as @GetStrange42, we're on Mastodon @GetStrange42@universeston.com, and on Facebook, where you can find us by searching for Things Are Getting Strange, an X-Files Rewatch podcast. Additionally, and if you're not sick of my voice right now, I also have a channel on Twitch TV called AdverseCamber42, where I stream whatever I'm currently playing on the PlayStation 5. It's Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 PM GMT, and Saturdays at 5 PM GMT if you'd like to watch me live. I'm currently playing Wolong Fallen Dynasty. I also have a connected AdverseCamber42 YouTube channel, where I put up any old episodes of things that have been on the Twitch, and I've also just finished a YouTube exclusive Let's Play of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So do please check that out if you're interested.
We have a Patreon, patreon.com/thingsgettingstrange, where you can find all of our Let's Play of the first X-Files game, the FMV one on the PlayStation, where we die repeatedly, and our review of Mulder and Scully by Catatonia, and our review of Goblins by Charles Grant.
Hooray!
Hooray!
Whirlwind by Charles Grant to follow next month.
Yes. All of which can be had from as little as $3 a month, if you'd like to give us any pennies you have. More than a few pennies, but anyway.
It'll be appreciated because any money you do give us will go to upgrading our stuff.
Our theme music is Vision by Kevin MacLeod. You can find it on incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, please remember,
It's about misdirection.